Are we live? Can you hear me? Yeah. Game on? Yes. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I don't know if anyone saw the room before this session, and it was terrifyingly packed. And it's like one of the few times a presenter is like, I'm happy this thinned out a little bit. But thank you for being here. And I think, one, that the conference has a storytelling thematic to it, and that almost all these sessions have been well attended, gives testament to right now the thirst, if you will, it's called hunger, to storytelling in our work. And so my name is Andrew Bernier. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Cincinnati. I'm in the School of Education, but I do focus on STEM and sustainability education. I have had a really weird journey getting to this spot, and I won't indulge that too terribly much. But also, please don't think I'm a narcissist by bringing my own camera and tripod getting this here. If you are early in your journey or even halfway through your journey, and you don't have good pictures of yourself presenting at anything, like, it's really miserable to ask your friends, hey, did you just happen to snap a pic when I was doing that presentation? So for your own storytelling journey thereafter, having actual digital evidence of you doing stuff is a good idea. And I'll get to a little bit more of that. Also with me is my friend Phil in the corner, spelled P-H-Y-L. I actually did stumble upon that like that in a hike in Redwoods National Forest. He doesn't know that he has been seen by many, many people because he's more a sidekick presentations, because it's a leaf. So, moving on. Okay. Oh, before I get in, I teach, and so it's one of these things where I see people pull out their notepads and they take such good notes. Like, don't worry about the notes. If you open up your phone and go to my presentation session, the PowerPoint is there, so you really don't need to copy anything. And actually, I encourage you to have it open in such a way, because I've given you access to a chapter I've written called Sustainability Storytelling is Not Just Telling Stories About Sustainability. A lot of good nuggets in there, and also connections to great resources. 2 worksheets I actually have in there. It's funny, as a teacher, I hate worksheets, mostly because of the whole printout thing, but sometimes it's good for guided learning. And also, well, I said the presentation, this, and a couple other documents as well. So, okay, so basically, I want to try to treat this as a presentation meets in the moment workshop. As we go through the slides, I want you to think about, again, being narcissistic, yourself, in a way. Because all of you have been on a journey to get to this point. This presentation is not going to be so much about things to talk about, like to amplify your work in a way, but it's more about structure. It's more about the actual intention of design for storytelling, and how is that appropriate in a sustainability dialogue. Most importantly, for empowerment to others. And we'll go through that in a little bit. So, as you write or have notes or whatever, think about more of the internal processing of how you see yourself reflecting in this work. Okay, a little bit about my journey. I like saying this, that I would not be here if it wasn't for a free piece of pizza during my senior year of college. Straight up, it was a Teach for America recruiting session. I had no idea what the hell I was doing after college. And I was starving. I didn't have money for a meal plan, and so I just wandered over to a session, got that piece of square pizza and a bag of chips, and that was like my nutrition. And it then plunked me into teaching middle school science in Arizona. I went to school in Ithaca, New York, upstate New York. And a kid used to snow, then went out to the desert. But I was an environmental studies major. And in all my master's papers, as I was going through a concurrent program at Arizona State, I wrote about why sustainability is cool and why educational design is not cool. And how is it that sustainability can make education better? And that kind of fell flat for most people except for one who heard that story and then offered me a job at a STEM magnet school for 4 years, and actually was able to do really cool projects with students such as these 3 on the left. We built school gardens in urban areas of Phoenix, Arizona. I brought them to wetlands management, and I brought them to other workshops with Arizona State to actually get them working collaboratively with researchers, professors. And these are kids, some of them who have just been told, no, you're not going to amount to much for most of their early educational career. I was told that my program was getting cut. And so I stumbled onto a conversation at a local conference, and someone says, oh, the local NPR station was gonna hire a science correspondent for the first time. And I was like, my voice is okay for that. And so I applied. I had no real broadcast background whatsoever. I got offered the job because I was really good at conveying complex topics into simple ways that people at different ages could convey. That's me interviewing Ernest Moniz, who was the Department of Energy Secretary under Obama. Under my 2-year stint at KJZZ, which is the NPR affiliate in Phoenix, I interviewed 6 people in that cabinet. And you don't ask dumb questions to people who are in a presidential cabinet, okay? Best hair also goes to Ernest Moniz, and that is the least grainy picture of me during one of the coolest jobs of my life. Again, get good documentation of jobs that you like. I then went to academia, I finished postdoc and so forth, and I actually managed a youth media nonprofit where I helped kids in really under-resourced neighborhoods find and amplify their voice. And so that's one of the images and it was it was a partnership with the community college that hosted the radio station. And I was really into just telling kids, look, I don't really care what your story is. You don't tell a child that. But I want to make sure that you feel strong enough and have access to tools in such a way that you know how to amplify what that story is and feel proud about it. And that was my role. And to help them clean up language and edit and so forth. I do want to take you to one story though, that I did in my radio days. And so I finished my Ph.D. in sustainability education, and I was now in radio. I left the classroom where I was teaching, 20 some odd students at a time to now conveying stories to tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people in the Phoenix Valley. A couple of my stories went national. And so my classroom essentially went to millions of people. And all the while, my job remained the same. Find interesting people doing cool stuff and convey their story in no more than 4 minutes. And so I want to play one story because this guy was just a dude who got lost his construction job, and I was interested in closed loop systems at the time. Oh no. Hold on, I didn't realize I was going to start so randomly at a random spot. Hold on. And this is the point where I've lost total control of the PowerPoint. Oh, there it goes. Okay. So, KJZZ, here we go. I'm going to see if I can. Could you hear that at all? Barely? This means 95% less water used compared to conventional farming. Rainwater harvesting hopefully it just goes away. All right. It's funny, I was actually following along with the article online, and then I looked over and it wasn't projecting over there. But in the actual presentation on my profile, if you wanted to check that out, there's infographics, there's videos, there is a lot of multimedia integration that actually will help hyperlink to what's going on. Okay, so now let's academicify this. Not a word. Basically, I wanted to try to ease something that was this man's journey. He was out of work. He got laid off at the original housing recession in 2008, took advantage of a dilapidated pool, and then turned it into a burgeoning global nonprofit, all out of just a Phoenix suburb. In that story, I really wanted to showcase both the struggle and the humility that he went through. He was literally just trying to feed his family, and then not only was figuring it out along the way, but sharing that new story as well, and got a lot of people hooked into what he was doing. And actually curated curriculum and resources to help, and empowering other volunteers to help build these pools in other places. So, what I drew from that, and what I've gone into my work both as a storyteller and as a teacher, I have found that either personal or professional, sustainability is a practice. Our discipline is action-oriented. Please never forget that. And it is an intentional change. So when we think about action, we think about competencies in general. And I hope most people here are familiar with sustainability competencies. But we think about requisite skills for sustainability, negotiation, organization, futures visioning, and anticipatory work. It's the things that help us develop skills, and then the discipline is the knowledge itself. The sciences, be it social, physical, the things that we tend to gravitate towards are the things that are kind of able to be interchanged. But it's the skills part, and particularly the dispositions, the attitudes that we carry with our storytelling, is what can help. Do you tell a story out of anger? Do you tell a story out of empathy? Do you tell a story out of humor? Do you tell a story out of nervousness when you meet someone for the first time? And what I think about is systems thinking is often identified as one of the core competencies within sustainability. It is that mental discipline for sustainability. It shifts the focus of how knowledge and skills works together and not independently, which a lot of times we can get hung up on. And it sets us up for emergent opportunities in our career. And I think that's the most critical thing, is that when you know how to articulate a story and know how to share your story in diverse ways, when you're able to read an audience, you don't know how maybe a singular member of that audience is going to respond, and then turn around and potentially offer you a leverage in your own career. I literally showed up to a speaker's event and just talked about how radio is cool, and then that sent me into a journey in public radio. Same thing with teaching, same thing with the current job I have now. I cold called somebody at the University of Cincinnati. I was like, hey, you're in a journal that I've also written in, can I talk to you? And now this is my new life path. It's those singular moments that kind of punctuate when you're just humble with where you are, and you invite people into your own conversation, into your storyline. When I think about resiliency, and there was another thematic within this particular pitch, was that a diverse skill set is a resilient skill set. There's two core elements when it comes to resiliency. I used to teach systems thinking, so sometimes I go down this road. But when it comes to resiliency, there's two major factors that you can measure for that actually showcases a resilient system. One, the diversity of the components within a system, and two, that system's capacity to self-organize. So when I think about the skill sets and how you organize yourself in your journey and your professional capacity, are your skill sets diverse? Is your knowledge diverse? And how well are you able to organize yourself and others to realize a vision that you have? And can you share what that vision is? Of course, we've all heard about wicked problems. They are complex, and not only are they ridiculously complex as far as the intricacies, but complexity really means you have agents acting against you in your pursuit of a solution of a problem. But as we try to share our story and foster ourselves and others as sustainability change agents, we need to be really articulate with the combining of skills and knowledge to navigate that complexity, and honestly, with elegance and simplicity. If you're trying to, I was eavesdropping more so in the previous session and how some of the panelists here were saying they've been bombarding their students or their recipients with too much information. And as a teacher, I think about cognitive load all the time and how much information we're like bombarding students and other people who we're trying to send information to. Simplicity, elegance. It's that notion of, here's my theme, here's who I am approachable, I am myself an invitation for conversation. I don't want to try to put up a front that makes me think like I'm above. Okay, so this is, through work, I want to try to establish this, and this has often been a slide that most people tend to gravitate towards because it actually distinguishes a couple of things. Publishing, and I think about the academic world, storytelling, which is what we're here for, and then marketing. So when a lot of times when people say, oh, we do storytelling, that goes under a communications umbrella, and then it kind of gets gobbled up into a weird marketing thing. I currently just overhauled a graduate certificate at our school, and I've been going back and forth with the marketing department. I hope you never see this video. It's not a lot of fun, but because it's two different languages and what we're trying to get at. And I'm really trying to help convey, we need to recruit students. We need to phrase things that's attractive to enrollment, but that is part of my purpose. But I'm more curious about, well, my academic needs, so this is gonna be the left-hand column, but like my actual interest falls in the middle. So the first row is this idea of whom are these methods for. So when it comes to reporting and publishing, we're trying to get, for myself, professional growth, and I'm trying to contribute to the field. Thankfully, I'm not tenure track, and I don't want to be because that whole publish or perish thing is one, a lot of stress. But two, I feel like I have to put something out and then move on to the next thing. I don't get to immerse in something for a while. But in the narrative, we think about the benefit of the audience. And there's something that is said to be that we are assuming that's what's happening with reporting, but we don't have a tangible relationship thereafter once we publish something. And then for promotion, when we think about marketing, it is trying to message for the gain of the self or the organization. We are actively trying to improve ourselves in such a way when it comes to marketing and promotion. Whereas in the focus of the different messages within reporting is bringing attention to a specific phenomena that's being measured. So in the case of Dennis McClung in the story, I wanted to showcase, cool, here's the thing about closed-loop systems and micronutrient cycling, all within a really interesting story dynamic of a man and his family. But in the narrative, I wanted to bring attention to the people in that experience, how he struggled, how he was not sure how he was going to feed his family, and then how he empowered others to look at their properties very differently, and how that kept blossoming. Whereas in promotion, we always put attention to the stuff or the service that we have. We lose sight of the people. When I was interviewing scientists, they were always talking about the work that they were doing, and I was like, so what was the aha moment? How did you feel? And a lot of times they stumbled on that question. No one trained them, and no one asked them about like, what was the spur of your curiosity that got you to this amazing, findings? And it was almost asking a human to be human, who's usually asked not to be human. You're like, no, you're good. I'm not threatening. I want to share that inspiration you had to others. Because my goal is to spark a curiosity if it's a 70-year-old or a 7-year-old. I don't care. The intent of each one, with of course the publishing and reporting, we want to try to reduce as much bias and conveyance and improve the conveyance of the process as possible. For anyone who's published a standard research report, you are familiar with that. Over in promotion, we are driven by success and outcomes. So, if we're marketing something, are we increasing our headcount and enrollment? Are we bringing in tuition dollars? Did I get more likes today? Like, I don't know how many times I've been in meetings where we threw around the word impressions on social media, and no one's like, what does that mean? No one's like, it doesn't mean anything, it just sounds good because it's a metric, right? Like someone scrolled by and saw your thing pop up on Instagram. That's a measurable piece of data. But what's the actual meanings behind it? Whereas that last part, the intent is that it actually admits to conflict and struggle. How many times in some of your campus marketing have you showcased a student that was on a really heavy learning curve? How many times have you thought about your moments of heavy learning and regression and maybe almost quitting? Do you feel it would make a good front brochure? People are scared of that because it's the realest thing we got. And all of you on your own respective sustainability journey have been through it, are going through it, and got more to come. But that's the gloriness of it, because we've grown so much up from those moments. That's why we've all decided to burn a lot of carbon to get to here, so that we can go back and continue to share our story and empower others. So basically it comes down to what is your desired control, the audience in which you're trying to impact, and the scale of the message itself. So the smaller the audience and the more targeted, you're gonna get more into publishing. The greater and larger and less in depth, you're gonna get more into promotion. Whereas storytelling actually hits a really sweet middle spot. You don't have to go into really fine details, but you get to connect really specifically with people at a level that the other two are not going to be able to get to. And so the questions I want you to continuously ask yourself as you go through this process is like, what can you do? And this is in service to a product or a service directly. And this oftentimes will be of thinking about other people's visions for what they want to do. And then what can you help with indirectly? Yes, actually backtrack. The first one is about your purpose, your intent. The second one is about other people's visions and helping them realize what they want to do with their journey. And then how can you help others achieve your vision? So empowering others to come back and feed into your purpose. I'm very clear with my intent of how I want to reform education design. You know, I used to be big on recycling, and then I was in green building, and like I've got this lead GA thing that I keep renewing, and I have no idea what I'm going to do with it, but it costs me $200 every other year. But I want to be able to like, hey, I know a thing. I want to help you for folks maybe in our engineering school or in our operations. Like, hey, if you haven't thought about this, I got this background. Let me give you some tips. Okay, as I said, I'm in the School of Education currently. And right now, I teach teachers. It's a lot of fun. I'm in a fully online program, and so if my voice gives out, it's because I'm not really talking out loud this much to people. But part of what I wanted to hear was give you a couple ideas of things that can actually help leverage your students improve their journey. And so this is Mr. Shaw. He teaches over in Indianapolis. He's a 5th grade teacher. He has like nothing to do with sustainability. He's just like been a guy doing his thing. And so we've been, I've asked him to keep, if anybody's familiar with the Microsoft Office suite, there's an app called Sway. I don't know if anyone, okay, go ahead. That's about as popular as most people want to perceive Microsoft to be beyond this. But if I can, it will work. Sign in required. Not doing that. Okay. I do have a Word doc, so let's get on that. Well, okay, well, that's a bummer. All right, it's one of those things where you think of 3 different ways to mitigate a disaster when it comes to a presentation. Actually, let's try this. You will not fool me this one.
You're doing great.
All right, you ready for this? Nope. All right. Here we go. Okay. So, Mr. William Shaw, PowerPoint. Oh, you keep doing this to me. Let's do Word. All right. I'm going to give you one more try in Explore, and if it doesn't work, we're moving on. Oh, groovy. Okay. So this is the really rough version of actually a really nice, like if you've been to a website and it's a continuously scrolling single page, but different things pop up. So if you have access to if your school does a Microsoft Office approach, this is actually a really nice tool. But basically, my journey is I give assignments as I do throughout the semester, but I want them to post this to kind of like a living portfolio of the assignments. And so, but I focus on their capturing of media as they go through this journey. The reason why I like Mr. Shaw is because he's very humble. He's kind of bro-y in a way, if you will. I mean, he's a football dude, as you can see. But he just wants to help kids. And he's really into the outdoors, and he's talked about different nonprofits that he's actually been able to work and bring in as students, such as this STEM-focused nonprofit. And I have asked him to do timelines about environmental education and where do they find a local organization that has worked in this space. So even though I'm fully online and my students are all over the country, I really try to emphasize local to them curriculum, so that's not just a real blanket, bland kind of thing. And what's rad is that then, we do systems thinking maps. The thing I want to get to is I have them go to local places that have been environmentally challenged and help share the story of what's been going on. So he's taking pictures of local waterbeds. And the thing that really tickled me, and then he does a lesson plan as far as water and how he's going to work with his students in this. And then he posts pictures of himself. See, this is a whole lesson plan. Actually implementing the thing in his house. And it just makes his journey more fun to be a part of. And the reason why I have asked these students if they want to make these sways publicly accessible is because hopefully that turns around and help encourages either some of his peers or other teachers to take on some of the same stuff. But he's just in his house, he's doing measurement things, checking out the flow rate of his shower head, and it's okay, hopefully we all brush teeth. That has an impact, and it's that sort of thing. Okay, moving on. So I want to give you all a little bit of time to actually help craft a story. And so this is where it starts to get real. Storytelling has been the way humans have best conveyed knowledge from one generation to another since we've been a species. Lisa Crone, who's at UCLA's Writers Program, she wrote a book called Wired for Story, awesome book. And then another book from Jonathan Gottschall is called The Storytelling Animal. We are quite literally neurologically wired for storytelling, for narratives, for the ability to actually convey what we want to convey in a place that we can see ourselves as a part of it. I love this graphic of the emotional journey of creating anything great. Because for a lot of us, especially for the people, the thing I've learned the most about this conference is how many of us are actually housed in operations, which seems the place where emotions go to die. Except for frustration and anger, maybe those two are there. But particularly when you wake up and you have a rad idea and you get one or two people who are super jazzed about it, but their plates are way too full, so they just become weird cheerleaders. You have your idea, it becomes, this will be fun, and it's harder than I thought, and this is going to be a lot of work. And then, you can either enter the dark swamp of despair as you realize you have absolutely no idea what you're doing, and even going to a conference like this barely sheds any more light because your people you work with are so. But you have resources of strength, and that could be family, that could be humor, that could be coworkers that you are just totally in sync with. And then you get through the muck, and then you start to progress to the other side. And maybe it's actually quite a different vision from what you started with, but it's progression. You've emerged from the other side of the swamp. Your idea is still a lot of work, but hey, maybe we can call it a day and have our little certificate that we put on our wall. Or then we get to, I don't know what the first place thing ribbon up there, but then you actually get the accomplishment that you and your university is really proud of. And it's just an inevitable process. I mean, raise your hand if you feel like you have undergone something like this with any type of sustainability initiative, be it personal or within your campus. How many of you openly talked about that with other people? How many of you have actually articulated it in a structured way that was meant to be shared with people beyond your immediate audience? 7. Cool. Voracious, I like that one. Okay, so it's. However, we come to these places and it's okay, I'm here running this Blazer and stuff, and I got this PowerPoint, I'm gotta be professional. It's all that we're trying to do in these at a very almost superficial way is try to convey this with more substantive detail to help empower others. That needs to inform the way in which you message your work to other people, because that way actually you invite other people into the conversation. And so we gotta start getting other people caught up into our story. Some people have told me, well, storytelling and narratives is dumbing it down. No, it is not. Storytelling is what I like to call the most common denominator that we have as humans. Outside of breathing, drinking water, eating food, the way in which we communicate in a way that is highly engaging is storytelling. You do not need to dumb it down, but it also makes your message way more accessible. It makes it more memorable, and it makes it more meaningful. So if you only have one shot to communicate with somebody, like for me to you, this will be the only time that we communicate. And I've chosen to be that guy who talks at you for a long time, which I've so many times bemoaned and told people not to do, but here I am. Bring them the story. Give you all some facts and some to, have evidence. It's like you're arming somebody to turn around and go to your administration, like, oh, 87% of students said this. It's like, okay, it's hard to argue. That's not my purpose here, but it's more about you understanding that having some tangible evidence and facts to walk away and educate with is better than not. So anytime you try to have that, initiate a conversation, come locked and loaded with some tangible figures to help empower your message. And that is the empowerment factor. What is that mechanism to leave with more? That is our focus on sustainability. Okay, I'm taking stock of time. We got a few more minutes here. This is the structure, and I'm gonna go a little faster through this than I wanted. But basically, I've listened to thousands of stories. Be it my time with public radio, be it helping students make their own, be it having students make stories and so forth. And I found that for the effective stories, there's a common theme. This is where I want you guys to really take away when you think about your stories. When I did that story with Dennis McClung Garden Pool, I talked about a guy at his house, talking about his crummy pool. You all could see that, right? I know there were pictures. But you could be there, right? How many of you have been to a pool that in the backyard that's like, I don't know if you should be swimming in there. Okay. You introduce a person or a group of the work. I don't realize I actually did like a lot of fade-in like this, but basically, are you able to clearly articulate and connect to the struggle with a familiar emotional tug? And if you have a piece of paper or something right now, I kind of want you to think about your own journey in a place where of a point of struggle. It doesn't matter like what it is, but basically, is there a really kind of small, tangible thing, if you will, that maybe other people can easily resonate with? You've heard how many stories already at this conference that you've like, oh yeah, I have that problem too. So the way in which the double diamond or little big picture works here is that the wider the diamond, the larger the scale of the story, as in the bigger the boundary, the more people and places we think of. The arrow going down is a timeline. Now, time is not actually a linear process. The storyline is a linear process, but sometimes you can start in the middle of the timeline of the story. Sometimes, I've seen movies where it says, hey, this is what happened at the end of the story, but in order to know this point, we need to go to the beginning. You can manipulate the timeline, but the storyline is an actual linear process. What I found that you get that initial tug, and then you blow it up to the bigger picture. What does this mean at a grander scale? We think about decarbonization at our own campus and what fuels us, and then what does decarbonization look like across higher education in the United States? Like that's that theme. Here's what we do, here's what we learn is happening across the university. What is the triple bottom line at play? So being cognizant of the economics and social implications, and then thinking about what are some of the bigger solutions that are being kicked around. And then we go back into the small picture. We revisit the people in our story. That's the journey part. What are the small steps being made? We highlight small wins. And so when you think about the message in your personal journey or in your university, small wins, capture the small wins. Nothing is too small to be celebrated. It might not seem like enough for a brochure cover, but damn it, it can really help prove a point that what you're doing is help improving students' learning outcomes and increasing the happiness of faculty to keep their work going. And maybe it brings in a couple of tuition dollars here and there. All the while, for me as an educator, and if you yourself are an educator or support educators, it's this idea of what are the requisite knowledge and skills needed and being used. Even if you yourself are not in an education appointment, any sustainability initiative at any campus is a learning opportunity. I want to really hammer that point home of understanding that all campuses are learning labs, if not design studios, and that any initiative with physical plant, transportation, food, energy, those are all learning opportunities. And in the design process, if you have any capacity in that background, make sure that there is opportunity for student engagement and learning. Don't remove student learning from the process. Every moment on campus is a learning opportunity. And then we have to scale that. Okay, if we are having small wins, if we are having greater learning outcomes, how do we scale that for not only, say, more colleges and schools across our campus, but how do we help our regional partners? How do we help our community college institutions? And work colleges and community college institutions, they're some of the best seeds of this work. So you yourself are not the progenesis of some of these solutions. Some of your local partners are actually where the solutions lie, and having the humility to go to some of them and be like, hey, we're having a really tough time, what are you doing? And not trying to think about it as a competitive process, but a collaborative process, because as we all know, we need as many people and programs on deck to make this work actually happen. Okay, so what is the scale of the story do we need to realize it? Are there other examples of it? And at the end of your storyline, are victory, question mark? Are we there? Do we know that we're on the right path? What's the data and feedback that we're getting? What is that change looking like? And then most importantly, however the end of the story goes for you, how do we empower others to hop on board? If it's a success story or hard lessons learned for other people to avoid. Okay, so sustainable knowledge mobilization, and this is going to start getting to some more concrete stuff. So when you tell a story, you use your empirical research, that could be your data, your statistics as support, but that lived experience will be the majority of your story. Like when you work with other sustainability officers or coordinators, like have that resonance conversation about how did this feel, how did other people, like administrators and higher ups, respond, and how did you navigate that conversation? It's almost as much of a peer collaborative support session as like a therapy session. All right, these are the people that are going similar journeys as you, and administrators are always going to have this weird support / antagonistic role that they play. So then informing others of maybe what to anticipate in those conversations or strategies or projects is a really strong way of helping empower other people in terms of reducing the obstacles in their way. So the idea now is going to be knowledge mobilization. It's this idea of intentional messaging that weaves together knowledge and skills for intentional change. So it's on you to actually articulate what is the requisite knowledge, the things that I want people to know, and then the things I want people to be able to do in order to move forward. And then it is your responsibility to craft that story, to then mobilize others. And this is your narrative, this is your message. And how you share your message is a really large reflection of who you are. How do you invite other people in the conversation is a really strong indicator of how other people will perceive you as a peer, as a coworker. That's a functional human. How many people do you avoid because they're not pleasant to talk to? That's true. Or then when they talk and they're so incoherent or like on a different planet, like I don't know how to have like a substantive, productive thing with that person. Some of you are like probably thinking the same thing about how I talk. Okay, but think to yourself, like just what am I doing with the work that I create, that I strive for? Whose eyes can and do see my work? As in what mediums do you choose to actually project this out? And what life do I give beyond me? What is the sustainability of your sustainability work? What is the longevity of some of the things that they have? Okay, so one example I have is knowledge mobilization. This idea in my world, if I have to publish, a lot of times we're told to publish, move on to the next thing. Well, not everyone's gonna have $127 for 24-hour access to this piece of, I don't even know what that I wrote, but there it is. How do I take something that's a published article and make it live in a multitude of ways that expands its life and its accessibility? And so when you think about the work in which you put out and the messaging, this idea of chunking, of actually thinking about your work in chapters. How can you think about different sections that maybe someone doesn't want to read your whole thing, but really will get a lot from a couple of maybe selected, targeted, intentional, obviously bullet points, but themes that are there. So, there's YouTube, podcasts, infographics, op-eds, commentaries, like you can do this any which way, but how rad would it be if a professor took a published piece, broke it down into 6 sections, and then made a really cool, mini series on YouTube. And then gave that perhaps to a marketing office, like, hey, here's this really dense piece of published work, but here's a really nice accessible means of getting greater traction with that publication. And then actually invites more people to then actually go read the publication. It's more work, it takes time away from moving on to the next thing, but you get much more life and substantive traction if you actually start breaking it down. And not to mention, like, for anybody who is in the publishing realm, like, have a team, have different eyes. This is why we rely on editors to help clean up the language. You know, we have editors for when we want to publish, but then we have editors for our marketing and publication, or marketing and outreach offices on campus as well. You know, helping invite other language and accessibility points is critical. On an academic front, this is a big old thing. Like, what is your intent of sharing? Beware the Sagan effect. Like, the academic superstar thing is still alive and well, even though he got groovy in the 70s. But public perception and academic judgment can conflict, as in someone is like, well, you're so-and-so brainiac, I can't really access you, or I worship you. You know, my father gave me a big old DVD thing of Cosmos by Carl Sagan. It's like, I don't know if I have a DVD player. But it's that thing where, you know, he glorifies it, and I've watched them, and it's really good, but it's that notion of, like, I don't want to say authenticity, but is it accessible in ways? And does it even resonate 50 years beyond its initial work? So, okay, this was what I was hoping to get to with more time, so I'll leave you with this. And if you want to noodle on it, there's pieces of paper out here if you have this here. But, and also using the two worksheets that I have available. One is actually focused on LinkedIn, so if you actually want to do like a 60-second LinkedIn professional profile sharing your sustainability story, I actually have a worksheet on there where you map out what that script looks like. Along with, if you want to do a longer narrative using these structures as well, I have a thing where you can actually put in data points of, I don't know, your professional or personal life in this space, or other people's stories on campus to help structure what that narrative looks like. So it's really helpful to use storytelling and narrative models to actually structure the story. If you just go into our story, you can start rambling. How many of you have told a story where, like, oh God, I think I'm just rambling and I don't know if anyone's still paying attention to me, like, right now? Okay, yeah, other people have. It's a real thing. The structuring of a narrative really does help. It gives you a flow. The most famous is the hero's journey. You don't necessarily need to use that, but it's helpful. But we're all heroes in a way, because we're here, we're trying. So you could either take time now to outline a potential story you have, or craft how you may execute, say, a knowledge mobilization of a piece that, I don't know, if you've published something, or you have something that you're working on that you are intending to get out to the world. How are you, for things that you need to consider how to get these things done, are you working with a team? Are you working independently? Do you have resources on campus that help amplify your message and tap into audiences that maybe oftentimes are over-tapped or need to be accessed? And what forms? The video shorts, data visualizations, podcasts, op-eds. There are so many ways in which to communicate that academia really does a horrid job at. Where are you on that spectrum in terms of helping leverage different mediums to then empower the good work that you and your team does? That's for you to decide. That is the end of my talk. I realize was me the whole time. I just hope that in your brain somewhere you're like, I've got something I'm percolating on and I want to apply these structures and model to. But it's really about that intentional design. It's about that intention of who you're trying to reach, and is at the end of the little big picture, the empowerment. Have you given your story space for people to realize and see themselves as a part of it? Can you take out your protagonist, your researcher, your team, and can you empower others? Like, you know what? We can do that. Or at least I know where to go and the tools needed. And really do try to be solutions oriented in your storytelling. Because I know when I was an environmental studies major, it felt like I was majoring in depression most of the time. If you dwell in that, you lose people. So it is that solutions orientation to your storytelling that's going to keep people there. It's going to attract people to your mission. It'll attract students. And ultimately, it'll help empower. But stories do take time. Your timeline will be different from others. And it really depends on who are the other characters in your story. Okay, I am happy to chat afterwards, but thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoy the rest of your conference.